less than 2 weeks after Frances Haugen's appearance before a US Senate committee, Sophie Zhang, another Facebook whistleblower's public testimony before a UK parliamentary committee has further implicated Facebook for turning a blind eye to hate, misinformation, fake accounts and political manipulation, all of this in a bid to prioritize profits. Now, Sophie Zhang worked as a Facebook data scientist for nearly 3 years before she was fired in 2020 for poor performance, which she claims was due to her prioritizing eradicating fake engagement over orders that she was given, or rather, in a lot of cases, not given. Now, before she left, she published an internal memo accusing the company of prioritizing profits over protecting democracy. Facebook, we reached out to them for a comment after we spoke with Sophie, and they say that they fundamentally disagree with Sophie Zhang. Now, I spoke earlier to Sophie Zhang, and it was a pleasure to have you here on NDTV, and I began by asking her about political manipulation in the Indian context. Sophie, you've alleged that Facebook acted in a partisan manner, favoring the takedown of some fake accounts but not others.
I did work on several cases of inauthentic activity in India, which have been reported on. The activity I found was across this political spectrum. I received permission to take it down and we took down 4 out of 5 networks. But the 5th one, at the last moment, right before we were going to take it down, we realized that it was tied to a BJP politician, a member of the Lok Sabha. And so as soon as they realized that, I could not get an answer from anyone on what's going to be done with this network of fake accounts. Personally, I urged that we should take down the fake accounts and leave the MP and the politician alone, because I knew it would be very difficult to persuade the Facebook leadership to take any action. With that said, they were not even willing to take action against the fake accounts. And so ultimately this creates a very perverse incentive. Imagine a situation in which in India, if someone robs a bank, hopefully the police will catch them very quickly. But suppose that a member of parliament robs a bank without wearing a mask, with their identity in full display, and the police take a year to decide what to do with them, and decide to ignore the case because it's too difficult to arrest a member of parliament or something. That is essentially what happened on Facebook.
Okay. Well, let me just, for the benefit of our viewers, try and simplify this. So, explain to our viewers, Sophie, the chronology of events. You found a network of fake accounts, you identified them, you pinpointed them, and you reported them to your superiors at Facebook. But Facebook took selective action. There were certain accounts that were taken down, but those linked to a BJP MP were not taken down?
So I'm going to be very precise about my description here, so that you can understand fully for yourself. I found 4 separate networks of fake accounts acting in Indian politics in the fall of 2019. 2 of these were supporting the BJP, 2 of them were supporting the INC. The app network that I mentioned came later, that was the 5th. In December of 2019, I succeeded in getting people to look at it. They very quickly agreed that it was bad. They very quickly agreed that we should take down all 4 networks that I found. We took down 3 of the networks, 2 INC and 1 BJP networks, and we were about to take down the last network, when suddenly they stopped it because they realized that this 4th network was personally run by a BJP politician. And that was the network that I was unable to do anything about. This was in December of 2019. So in January of 2020, I discovered a network of perhaps 1,000 accounts that were being used to spread pro-app political messages in the lead up to the Delhi elections. These accounts were specifically falsely portraying themselves as BJP supporters who had voted for Modi and was choosing to support app in the Delhi elections for the apparent purpose of winning over other BJP supporters, if that makes sense. And so I was able to have these fake accounts, the 5th network, taken down by the end of January. I believe the Delhi elections was in February. I don't remember precisely. And so I want to be very clear that in the other 4 cases there was no direct evidence of who was behind them. Although the situation was certainly suspicious,
Right.
we can't say for certain who was behind them, if the app was responsible, if INC was responsible, if BJP was responsible,
Right.
etc. The only case in which we knew who was responsible was the BJP politician case that I was not able to take down.
Okay.
Messages and they don't respond. Perhaps they didn't see it, but if you're in the conversation with someone else discussing a different matter and they're happily responding to you on that matter, and you bring up a separate topic and they refuse to engage on this topic
Right.
and go back to the other topic, at that point it begins to become very suspicious. My personal guess is that no one wanted to directly say no because they knew that this would look very bad, and they wanted to give themselves very implausible deniability. Because I was continuously raising the issue and they never got even an acknowledgement. For instance, when I was working on the Delhi election case, the pro-app network in the Delhi elections, I would repeatedly bring up the BJP politician case. I would say, okay, while we're acting on the Delhi election, on this pro-app network, should we do anything about this pro-BJP network run by a BJP politician that I identified? If we don't, we open ourselves up to accusations that we are playing favorites, that we take down a pro-app network but don't take down a pro-BJP network. It quickly became clear to me that there was something very unusual going on.
Right. Well,
But of course, because no one acknowledged it, the company retains implausible deniability.
all right. Well, I think what is clear as day from what Sophie is saying is that there were fake accounts linked to the Aam Aadmi Party, the Congress, as well as the BJP that Sophie identified while she worked as a data scientist. While Facebook was quick to take action against the accounts linked to AAP and Congress, they didn't clearly take down the accounts or the network of fake accounts that were linked to one particular BJP member of parliament. And, you know, like Sophie's been explaining, when she asked her superiors or seniors, they essentially just blacklisted her or refused to just answer those questions. It's very interesting that you say this, Sophie, because Frances Haugen also talked about hate speech in, you know, a non-English speaking country like India and how it goes unchecked a lot of times because of under-resourcing and language barriers. But in your case, what you're saying very clearly is that under-resourcing doesn't appear to be the issue because you very clearly red flagged these fake accounts and you also very clearly questioned the selective action of your superiors, but you got no response. So that under-resourcing or language barrier in a certain sense doesn't hold true here. It appears to be more deliberate.
I would say so, and I would say so because in countries that weren't important, like to Facebook, in countries that weren't important to Facebook, like Azerbaijan or Honduras, it took more almost an year to start an investigation and to act on it. But India is important to Facebook, and so when I found networks of fake accounts, Facebook acted on it and investigated quite quickly after I raised them. The issue is that the priority that Facebook gave India I don't think that's the priority that the people of India would like or prefer, because ultimately the interests of Indians were subordinated to the interests of Facebook.
Sophie, you've appeared before a UK parliamentary committee as well, making these allegations on how Facebook is, being used as a platform for political manipulation. How do you hope to see this play out, your revelations?
Democracy cannot survive if there is one set of rules for the elite and powerful and one set of the rules for everyone else. That is the hallmark of authoritarian nations, of dictatorships like the People's Republic of China. And India is the world's largest democracy, and they very much hope it remains the world's largest democracy. But for that to be the case, I mean, democracy cannot rest upon a bed of lies. I think ultimately it's up to the people of India to hold Facebook responsible. I'm doing my best to achieve that, but what happens from now, the solution is in the hands of yourself and your viewers.
On a personal note, Sophie, what made you take a decision to take this on head-on and come out into the public with your revelations?
I realize that I'm quite unusual as far as people coming forward from Facebook have been, because I mean, it's It's unfortunately the case that most people are more concerned about about their own countries and their surroundings. So when former employees from Facebook have come forward, it's often, for instance, American employees who are coming over because they're upset about Facebook's work in the United States, or Indian employees who leave the company because they're upset about Facebook's role in India. And as far as those go, I would say that I'm quite unusual in that I'm an American employee who left the company fundamentally because I was upset about who came forward and fought tooth and nail to protect democracy or discourse in countries such as Honduras or Azerbaijan, or for that matter, India. And I have never been to any of these countries. I don't speak any of.
Yes.
I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak Azeri. I don't speak Hindi.
Well, Sophie, lastly, I have to ask you, how do you continue to take your fight forward?
That depends ultimately on everyone else. I try to respond to most interviews requests from reporters.
Yes.
And last week I did so many interviews that I lost my voice for a few days. I had to stop taking requests so I could recover by the time I testified to the British Parliament earlier this week. Like, because I mean, all I can personally do is speak out. That is my role, and what I accomplish depends on how many people listen to me.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Sophie, for speaking with NDTV. And based on Sophie's allegations, we also reached out to Facebook for a comment. They said, and I quote, that they fundamentally disagree with Sophie Zhang. In an official statement from Facebook to NDTV, they said, and I quote again, "We fundamentally disagree with Ms. Zhang's characterization of our priorities and efforts to root out abuse on our platform. We aggressively go after abuse around the world and have specialized teams that are focused on this work. As a result, we've already taken down more than 150 networks of coordinated inauthentic behavior. Around half of them were domestic networks that operated in the country and around the world, including those in India. Combating coordinated inauthentic behavior is our priority. We're also addressing the problems of spam and fake engagement. We investigate each issue before taking action or making claims public about them," unquote.